you touched on a little bit in your conversation, but I'd like you to expand a little bit how transit plays into this whole fact of our growing more densely, because growing densely is restricted by the automobile. As long as that's the primary means, that if we don't have alternatives, then there's only so much we can do. And that because we don't have enough pain locally in the sense of our commutes and driving to work, which we're still going to have to do even if we have walkable neighborhoods. Work is not likely a case where you're walking to work. So how does that play into the future, and how do we kind of get transit to be part of this message?
Well, that's a really complicated and good question. First of all, remember that the commute trip, which is typically the backbone of transit systems, is only 25% of household trips. The other 75% are to local destinations, more often than not, and they're short. And so actually, if you have a complete community, and Stapleton now is mature enough to be that, a lot of people tell me they live there, and but for work, they occasionally go somewhere else, but a lot of times they bike and walk right there, and they're not crazy hippies. They're just ordinary people that find it more convenient. But it's only more convenient if it's more convenient. I mean, if it's down the cul-de-sac road and to a 6-lane arterial with no sidewalks, and then somehow getting across and going, that's not convenient. So I think there's a big part of this that doesn't even depend on transit per se. Now that's not that transit's irrelevant or not important. It's very important. But it is, a lot of this happens anyway, or can happen anyway. As a matter of fact, once again, Stapleton is finally now, after 10,000 units and all sorts of local walking and biking trips and local destinations, and kids free. This is one of my passions, is the idea of a 10-year-old who can't go anywhere without a chauffeur driving them. I mean, what does that do to human development to be that dependent? But anyway, it's only now getting its transit. It's 15 years later, and it's evolved in a very healthy way without transit. So that's not, okay, now the flip side, why transit? Because at a regional structure, access to those job centers really has to have other means besides the car. And the distribution of job centers and how they're linked by transit to housing segments is very, very important. So that 25% of trips, that's not all the carbon, that's not all the household cost, but it is the thing that generates the congestion. And it is the thing that, if you treat it intelligently with transit, can create vital urban centers. So downtowns really become powerful, and town centers become powerful when they're linked by transit. So it's a both-and thing to me.